starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. First of all, we want to make sure that we all understand how this perception looks actually in the real world. So we think this perception is something that's reflected to us by many places in the world. For example, we say that religions always emphasize the virtue that is to be forgiving. To turn the other cheek is actually to forgive the people that really hurt you. We say that Yom Kippur, for example, the concept of forgiving the other side, and if you apologized, you are okay with God. And if you got the apology, you are good. You did something great. It's something that we see a lot. And we say that it's not only in religion. We say that in the real world, we have many pressures to forgive someone, for example, to give this person another chance, to just make this thing work by forgiving the other people. Notice, we think that real forgiveness is sometimes good. We think that real forgiveness, when someone really apologizes and you see that it is a real and sincere apology, is good, and as most of the times. But we say this forgiveness holds actions in it, meaning that people are really willing to change the way they behave, and that meaning that people will really accept this apology. We think that what is not good is that the perception in society today makes many people forgive other people without actually being willing psychologically to do so, and it makes other people a way that will make people really really change their behavior for the long run. So it makes apology a lot less important in our world today. Why? Because you have pressure on this. He said sorry, you need to forgive him. Well, but notice that forgiveness is in both worlds. Only in our world today, it is something that people are much more pressured towards. So I'm going to talk about two things. First, about how it affects the individual in 3 ways. And then if I'll have time, I'll talk about the macro level, how it affects us as a society. So we think it affects the individual in 3 ways. First way is that it enables you to really move forward psychologically. Why is that so? Because when in a world today, you sometimes get the apology and you are pressured by society to accept it even if you don't really want to. What does that mean? It means like a real situation. Someone acts and not nice like towards you, but you are in the same social circle. People are telling you, well, listen, just be okay with it. Just accept this apology and move on so we can all function as one group and be fine with each other. So we say the problem with this situation is that we have 3 problems with it. You get this apology when you don't really want this apology, when you don't feel like the dispute you had between both of you is really something that was settled, and you still feel like there are like many things that you don't agree on. And we say it really enables you to really give a solution to this dispute. Why? Because first of all, it is kind of a smoke screen, right? Because saying to someone, well, listen, I'm really, really sorry, please forgive me, and someone else forgives you, well, it makes you not really talk about the difficulties you have between them and like really open up your heart and say, well, listen, I hate you because of 1, 2, 3. We need to work it out, because you are so like aimed towards this forgiveness that you don't want to open up your real feelings. You feel like the forgiveness is some temporary solution that can really solve this situation, when really what you want to do is to talk about the things that are hard between you, because for the long run you need to just solve them. This is the first problem. The second problem we have with this is once you get the forgiveness, meaning that once you forgive someone, it is much harder to make sure that this person in the long run won't hurt you again. Because like, for example, I forgive Tomer, okay? I can't for the next month say to Tomer, well, Tomer, I'm really angry with you. Why is that so? Because when I forgive him, it's like a contract. I can't be mad for a very long time afterwards, because if that's the case, it's like I didn't give a chance to Tomer to make his things better in the long run, okay? So it gives me no exit right from these relationships. This is the second thing. And the third reason it is so bad? Because you are still angry, but now you can't tell anybody you're angry because it is like a plaster, a band-aid. You forgave him, so why are you so mad at him? So it's both you personally, between you and the other person. Second, it's the whole social circle around you that it is not legitimate to talk to about the difficulties you have. The second mechanisms we have is that it really not make our debates between us and the other person productive debates. Why? Because there is this, as I said, the smoke screen of forgiven. And once someone asks me for forgiveness and says, okay, I really apologize, I'm like, okay, I feel bad. I want to accept this apology, and I don't get the chance to really get to the source of it. Before I continue to my third mechanism, I want to take closing, please.
Yeah, you accept that the reason people do this is so they can move on and continue working together as a society. Yeah. Don't you think that's a bit more important than me being a bit sad inside?
Yeah. Well, I agree. And I think this is the main clash in this debate. Do we want people to continue and work together, or we want people to really talk about the things and move them to the surface and solve them? We think for the long run, we want people to really get mad at each other. We want people to be angry. We want people to shout, because we think that the disputes we have won't be solved if I am forgiving you. I think those things will be appearing again and again and won't be solved until we really talked about that, until you don't have the weapon of saying I'm sorry and me forgiving you. Third thing, as the side that asks for forgiveness, I think they too have less incentive to really change. Why is that so? Because they know they can ask for forgiveness. They know I will accept this forgiveness because I am pressured to do so, and I won't ask for the long run for them to change. Well, opposition can say, well, they still have incentive to change, because if I forgive them, they won't. Because I won't forgive them again if they don't change. But we say this forgiveness, as I analyzed you, makes me really unable to talk about my struggles for the long run because it is so powerful. So Tomer will talk maybe about the macro level. I explained to you why it is a tool that is really harmful for us, because it gives us insincere apologies. For all those reasons, please propose.
Woo! Yay, cheering! Okay, so I'd like to thank the speaker and call upon the leader of the opposition.
Woo!
Yay! Wow,
Thank
you're
you very
such
much.
a tough crowd.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Great. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to have 2 points of my speech. One, why it lead to better relationships. The two is why it lead to inner peace, and why I think this is make it a virtue. But before that, I will start with a little bit of framing and a short rebuttal. So let's talk about what is forgiveness, which is what government didn't tell you what it is. Forgiveness is not just an empty, automatic word that you say in order to keep everything good above the surface. No, forgiveness is the understanding of others' motives, what it had to do it, and letting go of resentment or the wanting to revenge. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you okay, so it's not only that people will. It's not only happen. It's not only to only happen if people are willing to change. You don't need to be around the environment of the people that you don't that they did wrong to you, even if you forgive him. Okay, so you don't need to stay. This is the first of rebuttal. You don't need to stay around those people, even if you forgive them. Okay, you can forgive, understand that they had no choice to do it. The act of anger, they did something. Okay, act of anger, or they just bad people. You can and I forgive them because they have no choice about this. But okay. But you don't. But they don't fit for my life. Okay, so I can leave them. Okay, they did. Even if I can't forgive them, I still did something better that I did. I don't want them to be near in my life. Even if I don't want to have revenge on them. Okay, even if I don't want to keep the grudge on them. Okay, because I don't want to still keep angry or sad or miserable with the memory about it. Okay, so yeah. So the second rebuttal is that they say that you are unable to but it's they say that you are unable to really But you have to really talk about the things. We say it's not true because you can't talk about their emotions. You can't say those things. You can open up, but then you can forgive them because you understand better that he reacted from the emotion. That he not really hate you, or maybe he do, but he said it because he's angry. Okay, because emotions. The forgiveness encourages you to understand the other side. That you will want to talk to understand more. You will want so it will lead to that you understand that he acted through anger or the argument. So let's go to my first point. My first point is what will lead to better relationship. Okay, so what's the problem today? People in relationships hurt one another, okay? It's all the time. Why? Because we're saying stuff by misunderstood, because we can only understand know how our person will interrupt, will understand our things. They act out of anger, or they are tired or hungry or unlogical, which leads them to act, to say or do things but hurt the other, okay? So there are a lot of conflict around it, and we can't have relationships without those conflicts. So we have to have a mechanism to resolve those conflicts, okay, without having grudge and revenge. A lot of incentives not to do it because of ego, because of anger, because of pride, okay, because I don't want to look like a weak, okay, in front of other people or in front of myself. So forgiveness comes here in contract for all those things, because it helps us understand the others, okay, what others act, okay, because I enter in his shoe, okay, to say why I did that in order to forgive him, okay. B, it let us compromise, because we now when I forgive him, I can and understand what's happening to him. I can have compromise for the thing that I want or he wants, okay, and then to better resolve this conflict. And C, see, it helps us looks on the good, okay, or things that he's done to you before, and I want just that break up with him because he did one thing bad. If for half a year he was really good to me, because I be able to forgive him, okay. Why this is we believe it is a virtue, okay, because it's, first of all, it's hard. It's really hard to forgive, okay, because you need because okay, it's really hard to do it, these things, okay. Not now. I will take closing later. We believe it's really hard to do this virtue, because you need to let go of your ego, let go of your anger. Which anger is really strong emotion. It's the only emotion that makes you act on. Okay, so it's really hard. That's why we believe it's virtue, because you need to control your emotions. You need to be logical, and to accept you need to be able to accept the other person. Okay, even with his mistakes. B, we believe it is it's important to society, because it makes you better society. Let's take a case study of a society which don't have this virtue, okay? They have the virtue of revenge, okay? The Muslim culture, okay, so it's really to if someone hurt you, you need to hurt them back, okay, to retaliate, so you won't look weak. So people have blood revenge, okay, and a lot of circle of bloodshed, but it's never stopping, okay, until the head of the Chamul say them stop this, okay, and stop this, and make them to forgive. And this is the only reason why they stop killing, okay, in the Sulha. And see, okay, with strong, and we believe it's strong, okay, because as I said, is able to do hard thing, okay. D, we believe, yeah, I said that already, okay, and yeah, we believe that is a virtue, because it's able to move forward beyond your anger, beyond your argument, to move forward and to continue to make better things, you know, for you and society. And we believe it's yeah. And okay, so why we think it's better than the comparative? Because the comparative, we think that if it's not a virtue, the other thing that people will put the point on that you don't need to forgive, okay? Because it's hurt you, so you need to keep grudge on them. And as I said, need to revenge. And before we continue, the second half.
Do you think that people will actually change their behavior after you forgive them?
As I said, it's not important if they, first of all, I think, yeah, it's work to better, to better relationships and better acting as an analyst, because if both sides are doing it, it's good. But as I said, it's not important if our person is changing or not, because if he's not willing to change, I forgive him. I can forgive him of what he done, because no, he has no choice to doing it, okay? But I don't need to keep him in my life. This is the important thing that but as I say, both government didn't understand, okay? So we think that revenge is bad because it makes you hurt people, then it will lead to more revenge, okay? Which is never a healthy cycle of hatred. and we believe that it will lead to inner peace. Why? Because forgiveness is also the ability to forgive yourself, okay? Because about the things that you've done and to able to move forward and the things that you believe that you've done, okay? It's really to help you, okay? To help you not focus on every little thing that you've done and make yourself better and make yourself with more inner peace from both the things that you've done and the others done, because you are able to look past your emotion, past your illogical thinking, and because of that, because of those reasons, we're really happy to support. Thank you very much. To oppose. Thank you very much.
Woo! Woo! I'd like to thank the speaker and call upon the Deputy Prime Minister.
Woo!
Hello, just to check, am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll start soon. Okay. We on Opening Government want forgiveness in society to be real. We think what it is not, it is significant harms that are being caused by it, both on the individual level and both on how people interact with each other. We think our comparative here is that forgiveness is a tool in your arsenal that you can use and consider to use in specific situations. However, we believe that it is not the cookie cutter solution that needs to be used every time you have an argument with someone. I'm going to firstly explain on why this narrative causes less sincere forgiveness. Secondly, on why this is significantly harmful to the individual, weighing this specifically against opening government, opening opposition, and then thirdly, on why we actually also are normalizing more oppression and like less better solutions to problems. All rebuttals are integrated. Firstly, on the perception, right? We say three things here. Firstly, this is probably a widespread narrative that is actively pumped through entire societies in religion and media, etc. Opening opposition agree on this. Secondly, people want to perceive themselves as good and as moral human beings. We say this is a very important premise because insofar as people want to be moral, they're also actively probably trying to act in ways which are perceived to be normal. Now, opening opposition tells us, oh, but forgiveness is understanding. It requires deep thought, etc. We say exactly in those cases, we think that people, because they want to be seen as moral, firstly, and because they want to be perceived as, and because they want to perceive themselves as moral, they're likely to skip that deeper level of understanding insofar as they have a goal that is very easy for them to do, thus create a less sincere apology because they don't have to go through that entire thinking process and reflection and self-reflection and reflection on the arguments that that they've had with other people. Thirdly, how this makes people act. We say this puts pressure to give us insincere forgiveness and trying to force themselves to forgive, right? We think this also creates the expectation that I cannot be now mad at someone because it gives the society and the people who are hurting me legitimacy to be mad at me and to blame me if I'm not actually forgiving them after I've already told them that I forgive, right? We get no response on this. Secondly, on harm to the individual. Notice we give you three mechanisms here already from Yael's speech. None of them were directly responded to. First, I'm not actually moving on because in some cases I actually cannot force myself to forgive. Therefore, I always have that specific anger towards me, towards the other person, which is making me very bad. Secondly, it prevents conflicts where they are needed, right? We say this is crucial because of two reasons. Firstly, arguments and conflicts are in a lot of cases a coping mechanism for people to release their anger, to feel better about themselves. Secondly, it is also very important for resolving issues. And this is where we enter a very important nuance in the debate, which OO never respond to. We are saying for some people, forgiveness is good and it is important. But for many others, right, it is not the correct way to handle things. Some people need to have arguments and some people need to argue in order to actually solve the issue at hand. What we're saying here is that this actually achieves OO's point of actual change much, much better inside of relationships. But thirdly, we say this is a smokescreen for preventing change by people using apologies, by taking the easy route. And again, this was not responded to. This is also what CO alluded to in the POI. But what we're saying here is that basically, if I know that I can apologize, right, not actually mean it, and the person in front of me is telling me, yes, I forgive you, everything is okay, that other first party that hurts me in the first place has zero incentive to change their behavior, because they see no consequences of their actions as soon as I'm being forced, using this perception, to give an apology, right? But fourthly, and another one, forcing themselves to forgive, we think it gives people immense guilt as soon as they are not able to do it. Because we're saying every single person is different and perceives people and perceives interactions differently, we say some cases cannot just inherently not be forgiven, which is why we're saying is that the person in and of itself are feeling very, very harmed by this, because they feel like something is wrong with them. Again, they blame themselves for being the problem in the situation, when actually the opposite side is abusing them in a very hard way. This has a couple of impacts. Firstly, less healthy communication in relationships, beating OO on their own metric. Secondly, much easier to blame me for something that I'm not actually to blame for, something that I didn't do, further causing significant psychological harm. Thirdly, it is harder to exit toxic relationships, because what we're saying is that the actual mechanism in which we want this to happen is not through forgiveness. They tell us, oh, but we want people to resolve their problems. Correct. But we say some problems cannot be resolved, and we say that this perception of forgiveness actively harms us, right? We say, firstly, there are a lot of other mechanisms to stay in a relationships, right? You have marriage, you have actual love, you have practical benefits from staying in relationships. On the other hand, we also want people to use different mechanisms in order to get out of the relationships. Now, what we're saying here, and this is very important, we say in a world with less apology, there's also more incentives for people to change, which means that every change of a relationship gradually through society without this perception would make relationships better, which means that there will be less conflicts in the first place. So if that's their metric, which I'm not sure why it is, we also beat them on that. Yes, second house, please.
Notice once you've apologized, you've conceded to doing something wrong, which means that you are much more likely to take a step to fix it. This looks like reparation or compensating the person.
No, I don't think so, because I think it's very easy for the person to say, I apologize. The other person says, I forgive you no matter if you change your behavior. If they forgive no matter what, then that person doesn't need to work hard and change. What we're actually achieving is better usage of this, because now the person has to prove that they have to earn that forgiveness and not actually just, oh, okay, I'll forgive you and that's it, right? Secondly, on societal harms, right? We say this is spun through media, right? Through stories and magazines, through coverage of news, etc., that you need to forgive the other person in order to be moral and in order to be a good human being, right? What we're saying is that this creates normalizations of how arguments should look, right? Very cookie cutter. Someone does something bad to me. That offends me. That person apologizes. I forgive them. What we are offering you in opening government is a much more wide spectrum of how people can deal with conflicts in the first place. What we're saying, again, and this got zero response, is that inherently some different circumstances and different people have different ways of dealing with things. We don't want people to stay in relationships or in situations where they would be less better off if they forgive. And that's what we are fixing in this debate. Very proud to propose. Thank you.
Woo. I'd like to thank the speaker and call upon the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Woo.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Right. 1 second.
Writing would not help.
No, I'm not writing. I'm just taking care that my pages are ordered. Yeah, okay, good. So I will begin in 3, 2, 1, go. We think that first government missed our case. What we say that today, most of the people have a bias to think that they are a very good person, because nobody wants to actually think that they are bad. That means that most people need some kind of an incentive to actually acknowledge as a contra to actually acknowledge the other person, and acknowledge that he might be in a bad situation and feel not good about what he did, and have that first encounter with him, which will be a lot better because it will be a lot more rational, and therefore the problem solving will be a lot better. Why is this so important? Because government tells us, well, there are some people who need to tell the other person that they hate them, that maybe they need to curse them, maybe that's the best way for them to move on. We say maybe for some people, but most people have this bias where they don't want to feel like they're a bad person, have this bias where they know that they want to feel as a good person, and therefore won't even get into the conversation in the first place, and therefore they need this disincentive as a contra to that bias, and that is our case, and they completely miss that. I will have one point in my speech about release people who did their punishment and try to incorporate into society. But before that, I have a bunch of rebuttals. Firstly, about that case of abuse. We think that these kinds of cases are simply not the heart of this debate. People who get into these kinds of relationships of abuse are usually from a certain kind of personality or psychology, like something happened to them in their childhood. They have bad self-esteem. They tend to put themselves down. That means that these people do it anyway in both sides, so it's not mutually exclusive, and so it's not in this debate. But then they tell us, well, I have no incentive to change because reasons. We think that there simply is an incentive. If you have an important relationship in your life, for you in the workplace or in the family, or just like a romantic relationship, that means you have an incentive to change so you don't harm the relationship itself. If it's really important to you, maybe like you still have that incentive. We still really don't understand what's the big delta in there. But then they tell us, well, I will still be angry, but I can't talk to other people about it and then take it out of me. We think that it's exactly the opposite. We think when you see a person with resentment who actually thinks he is absolutely right, you get annoyed, and you get you immediately go against that person, and you don't want to talk, and you don't want to talk to them. In our side, you actually know that that person was willing to listen to the other side, so you're more likely to see them as a good person and listen to them and actually talk to them. Because when you see a person with resentment who thinks they're absolutely right, that it creates an immediate like anti to that person. But then they tell us, well, you need pressure to apologize, and therefore you get pressure to apologize in groups and work and stuff like that. We think that forgiveness helps you actually talk about the issue in a better way. Why? Because like issues like betrayal, like somebody hurt me, etc., etc., and it helps it do it with more rationality. Why? Because without me first forgiving the person, I stay with like bad taste in my mouth. I stay angry at the person, and these feelings harm my ability to actually think rationally and look at the case from that perspective, from the rational perspective, like outside of the case for a second. And so that means that when you have a fight, you can't go over it and understand it in a rational way. So it means that it gives you give up relationship or harm relationship, even even when they are good for you. But then they tell us, well, but you have no ability to move on because you have no ability to work things out and say that you hate them and stuff like that. We think exactly. That is exactly our problem. The fact that people tell other people that they hate them, that they curse them, all of these things happen in the moment, in the heat of the moment. That's exactly what Avishai told you. We think that is horrible. Without this pressure, like without the pressure to forgive, people say shit like I hate you, and simply ruin relationships which otherwise would be good for them. Did I go over everything? Yes, good. Second, do you have anything?
Look, we're going to prove to you that in our world, not only you have less negative moral value, you have more positive moral value.
That wasn't anything that I could engage with. Sorry. But okay, so let's answer to the previous POI that the second government gave. So they say that behavior don't change in our world. We think that it changes because of all the incentives to change that I told you before, and the ability to actually understand the problem better, to actually talk to the other person because he was willing to forgive you. He was willing to go that step. He was willing to understand that maybe you were in a bad state, maybe you're maybe you're in the heat of the moment and stuff like that, and therefore he's more willing to simply listen to you, and therefore you can understand that the bad behavior that you did to him. So that means that even if in their side there is some kind of more incentive to change, we think that in our side the change is more rational. So it's more exact to the case. You can actually talk to the other person and know what exactly you did wrong, what exactly is you did badly and stuff like that. And then you change in a way that is more accurate to the case and therefore better. But okay, so let's talk about my point about release people who did their punishment and try to reincorporate into society. Look, without the incentive to forgive, people are afraid of these people. People think that they are bad people and they can't change and stuff like that. But when you have a pressure to forgive them, to say that maybe they're okay people, that maybe I can take them back into work, that is when they can better incorporate into society, and we have more ability when you go out of jail to actually get back to work and stuff like that. So it means we have a better society in that case as well, because you have to get a more rationalized kind of idea of the other person. Please support first opposition.
Woo!
3, 2, 1, go. 3 things in my speech. First, rebuttal to CG, then 2 cases. The first case is going to be a direct weighing over OG, taking them at their best case scenario and explaining why the comparative actually falls to our side, because their comparative of confrontation is something that is going to be really harmful. The second case is going to be dealing with the historical international relationships between rival groups, taking this debate to the macro level, which nobody wanted to talk about for some reason, but we think that there are very big impacts here. Let's get into refutation. Look, they go, like Omar comes and tells you, oh, now I have this urge to be more accountable, and now like I have this inner thing that is telling me that like if he doesn't accept my forgiveness and if I don't ask sorry, then I have to somehow repent for the moral sin that I've done, and I'm more likely to take action. Notice that he bases all of this analysis and all this course of action of I feel bad that I did something wrong on the fact that I actually understand that I did something wrong. If you didn't ask sorry, and if the person didn't come and tell you that you did something that harmed him, right? Then we don't understand how you get to this situation, because we tell you that most of the times that people like harm other people, they don't have intent to harm them. Most of the times, I didn't mean to accidentally hit you or to bump you or to say something that was mean. It was just something that accidentally came out of my mouth. I didn't have intent to be a bad person, which means that in my mind, I didn't perceive it as something that is harmful. So I may have said something that I think is a joke, but it actually really hurt him and offended him. And I don't know that until he told him, which means that I don't have that inner thing inside of me that is telling me to go ask sorry for that, because I don't even know that I did something bad. Therefore, we don't buy their case on accountability, but I'm going to give more analysis notice about why we think that once you actually say sorry, you're more likely to be accountable because you've actually conceded to the fact that you've done something wrong. Let's get into the weighing, because like we think that OG take a really bad comparative when they tell us like we don't want people to accept to be forgiving. We want them to seek confrontation. We want them to be angry. We want them to hate the person that was mean to them, and we want them to continue to be aggressive. Why do we think that this is bad? 3 reasons why the confrontation will go to shit. The first is because both of the people are going to put defense mechanisms. The second, the first thing that comes out of the other person's mouth is an accusation. We have a natural basic survival instinct, which says that when someone comes and accuses me of something, when someone comes and says, you were bad, you did this to me, something like that, I instantly, psychologically have defense mechanisms of trying to explain why I was good, why I didn't do that, why I'm why I am the one that is correct and you are the one that did something bad, right? They see this whenever like two kids argue, like you hit me, and then he's like, oh no, but you did all of these things to me first, and all of these things happened before, and actually you hit me harder after, and things like that, right? What does this mean? It means that because both sides are likely to use defense mechanisms and to get aggressive at one another, because that is our basic instinct, it is unlikely that we are going to get into compromise. It is likely that this confrontation is going to look like a screaming match between each other of what harm was done, was this harm even done, was this even a thing, right? The second reason why this confrontation is going to be bad is because people lack nuance, right? Not all the people out there are debaters that understand like what the clash was in the argument and where exactly we disagree and what like this confrontation is about. Most people are not that smart and lack the nuance of coming and talking to someone in a constrained manner, explaining nuance, like why you harmed me, this is where I think you were wrong, this is where I think you need to fix it, right? Most people are likely to be taken over by anger, by hatred for this other person, because they have been taught to not forgive him. The third reason why the confrontation is unlikely to happen is because you can't change your mind. Once you come and confront someone, you're making a dramatic stand and being like, I accused you of this, this, and this. If you back down and you're convinced that looks really bad for you, that looks weak, that looks like you're not exactly, that you don't believe in the accusations that you've made for him. What we tell you is that once you've come and confronted him, you've made a stance that you're not going to forgive him, that he did something really bad, and you're not going to go down from the stance, and you're not going to bow down to him. Why is this really bad when we weigh this up to forgiveness that is fake forgiveness? Like, even if we buy into OG's narrative that this forgiveness is going to be pretty shitty, why do we still want that forgiveness? One, because we avoid the bad confrontation that we talked about, which is super bad. But secondly, because we tell you that time fixes everything. I might be pissed off at him for like 2 or 3 weeks or maybe 2 months, but at some point we're going to fall back into the norm of all the other things that are important to me in my life. I'm going to concentrate on my work, my wife, my kids, my house, and all these other things, and I'm likely to forget this. The third reason is that I'm likely to have teamwork with my partner, with this person, and have relationships with him in the future. And on those relationships, we're going to build new trust with one another. We're going to like see our differences and be able to like work together and be friends again. We tell you that when we weigh this up, confrontation isn't going to work. And in the long term, even if it's crappy forgiveness, the forgiveness will work in the long term because people forget. Therefore, we win by government's metrics. Before I get into the second point, I'll take a POI from OG.
This is a vast misrepresentation of framing. We explained that in cases where forgiveness helps, it is likely to still happen because of other incentives like love and utility that push you to the process of forgiveness. We get confrontations only when it is actively better than forgiveness.
Okay. OG tried to claim love and compassion. No, there are 3 structural reasons why I don't want to forgive someone because of my biological instinct. 1, because he actually physically or verbally harmed me, and I feel harmed by him. 2, I don't want to forgive because I feel cheated. Because if I forgive, I see myself as a loser because he hit me and I didn't hit me back, or like we're in an unequal balance. The third reason is because if I forgive him, I feel weak. We tell you that people have a natural instinct not to forgive. There is no love and compassion. When someone harmed me, I have feeling for revenge. My natural instinct isn't to forgive him, so we don't get this forgiveness that they talk about on their side. Let's talk about historical relationships and why they get much worse. When leaders that are affected by democracy and people that vote for them that buy into a narrative that you shouldn't forgive, leaders are much less likely to end conflict, and they're much more likely to prolong tit-for-tat conflicts. The best example for this is the conflict in the Israel-Palestinian conflict, where this conflict has been prolonged for 80 years because neither side is willing to forgive the other side, and actually and this makes it really hard for compromise. This is moreover bad because people's identity is built over hatred and victimizing and not forgiving the other side. What is the comparative? The comparative is that when we have forgiveness, the other side, the other ethnic group, the other minority, whatever, comes and says, I'm sorry. This is a recognition of a wrong that we've done. The fact that I take the step to say that I'm sorry means that we've recognized a wrong that we have done to your group, which means that in terms of reparations and compensations, you're much more likely to get pressured into that. For all these reasons, we beg of you to oppose.
Woo!
3, 2, 1, go. I'm going to be doing two things in my speech. Number one, I'm going to be explaining to you what happens here, right? Like, what message are we sending? How does that actually compare with other messages, right? Because there's been a lot of unclarity on this front, and most importantly, to actually address, like, when am I going to forgive other people and when am I not? And then most importantly, secondly, where do I actually get more forgiveness, right? On which side? Now, before that, I'm going to concede something, right? We are going to be focusing on just forgiveness at all, whether it's genuine or whether it's not. What we tell you is that forgiveness at all, even if it's the most basic forgiveness of I don't actually mean it, is the most important thing in this debate. Why? Two reasons. Number one, Tzvi explains to you why this is going to be significantly more common, right? He explains to you that people, just generally speaking, are very irrational. People are going to and people are unnuanced, right? And in order to actually go through the steps of having this like a proper eternal forgiveness, you're going to have to be a very, very mature person. So number one is in terms of just numbers, right? We just don't think this is going to be the likely situation. But secondly, notice the people who we think are going to be doing this deep type of forgiveness are the least important in the debate, because there are probably very, very good people with very, very rich inside worlds. And so we think that they will be fine either way and that they will find ways to be good people on either side of the house. The most important people in this debate are the people who need outside pressure in order to make them do this forgiveness, even if it's a fake forgiveness. Okay, so what do we get in terms of characterization from governments, right? So what governments tell us is that I anyway have incentives to make sure that I forgive people, right? So incentive number one that they give me is social pressure. Notice that social pressure is the motion, right? You can't just say, yes, I have social pressure anyway, because the motion is, should you have the social pressure, right? The whole reason that the concept of forgiveness being a virtue is a thing is because society deems it as something that is worth it for me, right? It is good for me as a society if you forgive other people. And so you can't just say, yes, you have it on the other side of the house, because that's the whole debate. But the second thing is the sort of internal, yes, I love the other person, I have a lot of compassion for the other person, right? Notice that I already explained why this isn't the likely case in the wing beforehand, right? Secondly, notice what Tzvi tells you, right, about the fact that people don't understand the fact that they are doing something wrong, right? What they tell you about this is, yes, no, on both sides of the house, why does it change if I know they're doing something wrong? But when forgiveness is a virtue, then the person is going to probably go out of their way to say, listen, I'm going to forgive you, right? You did this thing wrong to me, but I need to go through this act, right? Because forgiveness is something that is a representation of closure, a representation of being able to move on. So we think that they're going to be able to do this action, right? What does this mean? This means that there's going to be a lot of people who don't actually forgive other people, right? A government actually have to accept this in order to do this, right? The only time where that changes when it's a very, very good person with great innate worlds and with great, great values, and we don't understand why those people are anywhere near the majority, right? So before I move on to how this beats everyone, let's take Oji.
People mostly don't fight aggressively because of foolish reasons, but rather real ones. And in a world with pressure to forgive, there is less real solution for the dispute because of long-term
reasons. I say that the way they go about it is foolish, right? It is legitimate to feel aggrieved because someone insulted me. The fact that I then go and act like an idiot isn't then not foolish. Let's explain how we beat CG, right? So what CG tell me is that this is basically a way out for me, right? They tell me, I don't actually have to take accountability, right? And this is going to be the thing that actually makes me take action, right? Notice we think that there are other social pressures to make me take action, right? For example, if my girlfriend constantly feels neglected and constantly feels like I'm not picking her up, whether I feel good about myself that she forgave me, she's going to eventually break up with me, and then I don't have a girlfriend, whether or not this narrative exists or it doesn't, right? Secondly, notice that these narratives only serve in order to actually help society, right? So only when it resolves a social situation am I going to push this narrative onto people. If I see that a person time after time is doing something bad, then in that situation I'm probably not going to push this narrative, because why on earth would I, right? That's why, for example, we don't say, yes, let's forgive murderers, right? Because we don't think that this is something that has utility for society. So now let's explain where we actually get more forgiveness, right? Because CG don't actually touch on this question, right? What CG say is, we're going to get better forgiveness. We've already addressed this, right? So let's look at OG. What OG, so OG say, number one, we're going to get worse forgiveness. We've already addressed this, right? But secondly, they say that this forgiveness won't last, right? Because it's fake, it's not real forgiveness, right? So over the long run, I'm going to still feel aggrieved, the conflict is still going to stay there, etc., right? We agree to an extent, right? But there's two problems with this. Number one, Tzvi explains to you how over time, when I don't make a scene out of things, my life will just continue and I'll be able to deal with things, right? Tzvi tells you that I have to work with these people in order to keep my job. I have a family to feed. I have rent to pay. I have hobbies, right? We think that all these things are much, much bigger then the day-to-day things that I'm going to be forgiving people about. What isn't? Confronting people, right? When I have a confrontation, when a bunch of people watch me, when it was really embarrassing, when the other person said insults to me and said that I'm a bad person for doing this, when I wasn't sure that what I was saying was right on the moment and made me feel really, really embarrassed, right? That is something that I remember. But moreover, on a social level, it completely ruins the social structure. Why? Number one, because it creates a giant explosion, as Tzvi explains to you, right? We believe that people act based on emotion, right? They say, I feel this way, right? So number one, they're very often not able to articulate their emotions very well, and so people are just going to miss each other. And secondly, people become very, very defensive because it's an accusation, right? They said we want people to be angry at each other and take it out on each other, right? So when I say to the other person, listen, you did this and this and this, and it's really not okay, and I'm really angry at you, the person's immediate reaction is going to be defensive because of the form of confrontation, and because I'm not going there to forgive them, it's because I'm going there to vent. Lastly, notice that on a social level, this is worse, right? We believe that it is significantly less important that I walk with vented up feelings inside over the fact that at work people just cannot work together, over the fact that when we meet with friends we have to like split into different groups, and this tension constantly exists through the air and it carries over with me. For this reason, we believe that our metric is much, much better than government's. Why are we above opening opposition? We're above opening opposition because we actually engage with the most important part of the debate, right? Their analysis relies on me properly gaining forgiveness, right? Properly reconciling. We say we don't care about people actually reconciling their problems. We just care about the problems not festering and not becoming this massive, massive issue that creates long-term problems. For all these reasons, please oppose. Thank you.
Woo! I'd like